for the invitation to speak this morning. As Marie said, this is a part of what I do in being of service in some way. Not that I know anymore or am any more, I don't know, developed spiritually in any way, but that for us to gather and for somebody to share our thoughts. So, I've been doing this since I was a teenager, so it's kind of what I do. So I appreciate that you would allow me to do this. That's special to me and it's a part of who I am. So thank you. I always sit and think, especially during our meditation time, how can I improve on this silence? What could I say that would improve on this silence? And sometimes I'm not sure that that's possible, but here I am to say we have both. We have our silence and our sharing. Let me just say a few things about I'm wearing gloves. Part of my main thing about wearing gloves is to remind me not to touch my face. I'm a face toucher, and I have itchy eyes, and I put my hand on my mouth a lot when I'm thinking. It's kind of my subconscious way of, making myself be still and stop talking and listen more. So I'm trying to practice that during this time. I definitely think I'll go back to putting my hand on my mouth when I'm thinking. But the part is from my work in behavioral health care, one of our principles is to understand that the best way to have a problem is to think it can't happen to you. If I think that being infected with the virus can't actually happen to me, then I'm not looking for ways to prevent that from happening. We talk about it particularly in addictive services. If I think that being addicted to alcohol can't happen to me, then I'm not looking at ways for how to prevent that, which increases the risks that I would in fact experience that problem. So this is one of my prevention measures. Marie mentioned serving, and I think that I'm going to say some more about it, that practicing prevention is also a way that we can serve each other. I've decided, Phyllis and I have decided to take the tactic that we are in fact infected, and what we don't want to do is spread that. So we want to practice staying safely from folks physically. We live in Atlanta. We've been to the grocery store. We've been around other folks. We don't want to be the patient number one in Raven County. So while we've come up this weekend, we want to stay safe as well and to help keep our fellowshippers safe. For those of us who grew up in a Christian tradition, this is the fourth Sunday of Lent, and I've been thinking about the Lenten journey in our community of faith in Atlanta, which is at Morningside Presbyterian. Those practices of giving up and letting go, and hasn't that been brought to us? Practices of giving up our typical social interactions and letting go of those to create space for new traditions and new ways of being together. So I had planned to talk. Marie asked me about my talk about the unconditional love of God. My mentor Bernie used to say it was his one and only sermon, and I've come to find it's mine as well. My one and only sermon is the unconditional love of God. But I decided to, in current events, to explore an understanding of the unconditional love of God in the midst of a pandemic. A worldwide pandemic. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this event. Did you ever wonder, like, say in 1970, I know as a teenager I did, gosh, I wonder what we'll be doing in the year 2020. Here we are. 2020 is the year of the COVID-19 pandemic. Like 1918 was the year of the Spanish flu. Like 1941 went down in infamy. 9/11 has its own date. And in the midst of uncertain times and tragedies, there are folks out here experiencing tragedies, growing fears and anxieties. What is it that we can say about the unconditional love of God? I am one that, I think there's lots of things that go on with this, that this might be an experience, but I am one that generally approaches life with a fair amount of anxiety. And again, lots of reasons for that happening from growing up in a childhood of fear, my own physical, physiology and chemistry. But I wake up in the morning anxious. Most days I go to sleep at night anxious, most nights. And I've learned over years to be aware of that and manage it, so that what I've talked about before, what we believe is what we live out. And so working on physiology, on breathing, on calming myself, on imagery that, is calming. One that I want to share with you that has been really helpful for me, and different images help with different folks. But if we begin to feel anxious in this time, is to imagine a warm, comforting, glowing light in the center of myself. And I breathe into that center of warm, glowing, comforting light. And I breathe it out to the space around me. Because I live now in I did not grow up in a safe space, but I live now in a very, very physically and emotionally and mentally and socially safe space. And yet I'll bring that anxiety into it. So I breathe that warmth and comfort out into that space. And practicing that, it works for me. So I wanted to share that little piece with you up front. There are a lot of texts in the Christian tradition that speak of the love of God. But I want to share the one that for me has held me safe and close when times are uncertain in my own life. It's in Romans. It's if you know the text, it's the chapter 6, verse 8. And it's Paul is writing, and he's Paul the apostle, from in the Christian tradition, experienced a lot of upheaval and persecution, if we use the word, in his life. And here's what he had to say about it. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. Nothing. Nothing. No height, no depth. Not the untimely death of my oldest brother and my little sister. Nor any powers. Not religious leaders and their followers telling me I'm disgusting and perverted. not politicians voting to restrict my civil rights, any powers, neither angels nor demons, not a war, not a virus, not death, not life, not a pandemic, not the present nor the future, nothing will be able to separate me from the love of God. Will be able to separate us from the love of God. Nothing. If I truly trust, and there's the key, there's the piece of it. Nothing can separate us. If we truly trust, there's nobody that can make us not trust if we choose to trust that God holds us in God's love. You can kill me. You can't make me not trust that. I can die trusting that. I can experience the death of others around me. I choose to trust that God holds me in God's love. There's nothing that can make me not trust that other than me choosing not to. The key is right there. What am I choosing to believe? God's care and God's concern for us doesn't stop, even when we choose not to trust it. Even when the present circumstances seem as though we've been abandoned. God's love continues. So how shall I respond to that love? The question for me is, how shall I then respond to that love? As she was providing care for people dying in the streets of Calcutta, Mother Teresa's personal diaries, which we've accessed since her death, has revealed that she felt as though she had been abandoned by God. Mother Teresa. And yet, obviously, she trusted God even when her circumstances were dire, even when those she served circumstances were and continue to be dire. She led us, the entire world, forward in what it means to be a servant of God, even feeling that she had been abandoned by God. She continued to trust that God's love held her. Mother Teresa's life teaches us that faith is not about being a religious or maybe even spiritual. Faith is about trust. Trusting that God's nature is such that God will not break God's promises. The quote on my Facebook ID, those of you that hang around there, faith is seeing light with your heart when all your eyes see is darkness. Faith is seeing light with your heart when all your eyes see is darkness. Here's the thing. We have the capacity to choose how we will respond to the love God has promised us. Love that knows no bounds in space or time. Love that is unconditional, with no ifs, ands, or buts attached to it. And for those of us who grew up in a religious tradition, that includes, well, if you believe. There is no if attached to unconditional. God's love is not based on us believing. God's love is. I am. That I am does not exist because I believe it. I have the capacity to choose to believe it, which directs my living. If we decide that the unconditional love of God is not real, or that it doesn't really apply to us, that it really can't be counted on, we will experience the fear and anxiety that accompanies that decision. It's not a punishment. It's simply the result of. If we decide, however, that the unconditional love of God is real, that it does apply to us, that it can be counted on, we will experience the peace of mind and serenity of heart that accompanies that decision. It's not a reward, it's the outcome of the decision. Remember, and I've talked about it before, we will live out that which we choose to believe. We have the responsibility. We can't not choose. We have the ability to respond. It's not possible not to respond. We have the responsibility for that which we choose to believe. Choose wisely, Katie. My mentor, Bernie Overton, would say to me, choose wisely, because what you believe will direct the path of your living. Given that we choose what we believe, why not decide to believe that which will be positive for us in life? Hey, it's up for grabs. We can grab this one or we can grab that one. So why not choose that which will direct us in a positive direction in the living of our life? The pandemic has taught us concepts we didn't even know a few months ago, most of us in lay citizen life. We've learned about enacting physical distancing and social solidarity in a worldwide pandemic. What is physical? Social distancing is the term the public health folks use. Social distancing. I understand it more clearly as physical distancing, and to me, and that's a reality that we can't actually be distant socially, and I'll say we can't actually be distant physically, and Marie mentioned it earlier, and I'll say something more about that in a minute. But if we stand together in practicing physical distancing as much as possible, we can contribute to flattening the curve of the pandemic. People in Italy didn't think it could happen to them. If you look at the 3 months ago, they were still gathering in cafes and drinking wine together and celebrating that it couldn't happen to them. Even though they were very closely tied to China, socially in a lot of ways. And boom, it can happen. So we want to try to flatten the curve so we can collectively get ahead of a spreading virus. If each of us assumes we are infected, even if we don't have symptoms, we will choose to protect others from us. So this thing about being physically connected has to do with energy. Again, Marie mentioned it. Energy is a paradox. We literally live in the paradox of energy, because energy is both matter and not matter. Energy is both particle and not particle. It's waves and particle. We've actually been able to photograph light as a wave and a particle. It's both at the same time. It's God incarnate. It's what we try to capture in our language when we talk about incarnation is the energy of the universe. So we are, in fact, physically connected through energy. You guys know that Joy has been smiling at me this entire time, and I feel physically that smile. Because energy is both wave and particle, and we exist in it. So when we physically approach each other, we can do that energetically. We do it all the time. We give each other a frown and we back away. We give each other a smile and we approach. We are connected energetically and we can't not be. So how do we capture that capacity to be connected to each other though we don't physically touch? Let's take advantage of that. Let's use that. And because now we have technology where we can actually see each other on the other side of the planet, wow. Let's take advantage of that. So, exactly, let's be intentional about reaching out to each other and staying connected with each other through cyberspace. Hopefully folks will be seeing this in the next week and be connected with all of us that are here in the room. Email, social media, video conferencing, good old phone calls. The voice has energy. There are folks, when I hear their voice, I feel their energy because the voice has energy. Let's check on each other and encourage each other as we learn together how to be physically distant and yet still physically connected and always socially connected. So, as again, a behavioral health care provider, I want to definitely do the professional responsibility of encouraging people to follow the CDC guidelines that we've all learned in the last several weeks. 20-second hand washing, scrubbing between your fingers and in your nails. I saw a guy doing a 20-second video, and he was a beautiful tenor singing, but his hand washing was this because he was focused on his voice. I'm like, come on, dude, get between your fingers, scrub up. Disinfecting our high-touch surfaces, washing our clothes when they're worn out outdoors near other folks, stay home, maintain a 6-foot physical distance when you can from others, manage stress and anxiety, and boost your immune system with good mental hygiene. Drink water, drink water, drink water, drink water. I say to myself, drink water. Get good sleep. Eat nutritious food, limit your alcohol, get exercise, stay connected, laugh often, and importantly, support your immune system with experiences of awe and amazement and wonder. Research has shown the experience that literally most positively impacts our cellular molecular expression of the chemicals that boost our immune system. Let me say all that fast. The experience that most boosts our immune system is the experience of awe, wonder, amazement. Even more so than happiness, joy, entertainment, and even love. Awe. Pay attention. What brings amazement and wonder for you? It's different for each of us. Ponder the marvels of nature. Listen to inspirational music. What touches your soul? Pay attention and do more. Do that. Do more of that. Boosting the immune system is what's going to help when this gets closer and closer to us. Allow the unconditional love of God to permeate your being. During the pandemic and beyond. There's a piece of me that's captured by the wonderment of a virus. This molecule that we can't see without again, technology, we can see it, right? A microscope. Guns won't protect us from it. The military might of the biggest bomb of shock and awe ain't going to protect us from it. Our military right now is out serving us food. The National Guard is in line serving us food. Community. Solidarity. Laura mentioned it. That's our protection. Being in solidarity with our physical distancing, with flattening the curve, is our protection. Our society has, certainly our individual rights and freedoms are one of our biggest values. Right now we want to say the economy is our biggest value. It's about the economy. But I will say to you, one of our biggest values is our individual rights and freedoms. It's why we lock each other up when we break the rules. The biggest punishment we have is taking away our capacity to move whenever we want to. That's our biggest individual right and freedom politically, socially in this country. And here we are choosing to restrict our movement in order to protect each other. That is community. That's bringing us closer together as a community. A friend posted a poem that articulates what I've been thinking about the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. And so I want to close with this thought. It's by a woman named Kitty O'Meara, whom I don't know. I just know that she wrote this poem. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being, and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses, and made new choices, and dreamed new images, and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, as they had been healed. Amen. So be it.